Yo, what's up, gamers? So, I walked into the breakroom today and Gary from IT is standing in front of the TV with an Xbox 360 hooked up, a headset on, and the confidence of a man who thinks tonight is about to be peaceful. The Halo 3 lobby is full, everybody's talking trash, somebody's mic sounds like it's inside a washing machine. Gary hits that power button, and then 3 red lights stare back at him like the console just rage quit the entire generation. And that's when Gary just freezes. So I ask him, Gary, did your Xbox just die before the match even started? And he goes, no, it's thinking. Brother, that thing is not thinking. That thing is sending the dashboard in heaven. And that's when I remember the Xbox 360 became one of the greatest consoles ever made, with Xbox Live, achievements, Halo 3, Gears of War, Call of Duty 4, a whole generation of players hooked on online gaming. But underneath all of that greatness was one of the most infamous hardware failures in gaming history, the Red Ring of Death. So now I welcome you back to the Janitor Files, a series where we mop up gaming's biggest disasters, hardware failures, corporate panic, and the messes the industry would rather shove behind the entertainment center. So before we get into this, do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and help me keep this breakroom from overheating like the launch model Xbox 360. And drop a comment below. Would you forgive a console that failed if the games were good enough? Because Microsoft built one of the most important consoles of all time, and then had to spend over $1 billion cleaning up the hardware disaster hiding inside it. So let's grab a mop, because tonight Gary's Xbox is flashing red, the Halo lobby is starting to yell, and Microsoft is about to learn that winning the console war does not matter much when the console keeps dying in people's living rooms. The Xbox 360 was not some forgotten console sitting in the corner like a busted office printer. This thing mattered. When it launched, it genuinely felt like gaming had taken a step forward. Xbox Live was clean, online multiplayer felt easy, voice chat worked, downloadable demos were sitting right there on the marketplace like the console was handing out free samples. And then Microsoft added achievements, which sounded normal now, but back then that changed how people played games. Suddenly beating the level was not good enough. Now you needed the little notification, the pop-up, the gamer score, the proof you did the weird optional thing nobody asked you to do. But now the whole lobby could see it, and the controller, that thing became the blueprint. It was comfortable, wireless, simple, the kind of controller that made your hands go, yeah, we can live here. Then the game started landing. Gears of War made next gen feel heavy and loud. Halo 3 turned online lobbies into a cultural event. Call of Duty 4 helped redefine multiplayer. Mass Effect gave Xbox a real RPG identity. BioShock made people stare at their TVs like, wait, games can actually do this? So no, the Xbox 360 was not hated because it was bad. People were furious because it was great, and then it started dying on them. But to understand why Microsoft pushed this thing so hard, you have to remember where Xbox came from. The original Xbox launched in 2001, and it did not exactly walk into the console business wearing the crown. Sony had the PlayStation 2, and the PS2 was not just winning, it was sitting on the throne like it owned the living room. The original Xbox did build something important though. Halo proved Microsoft could make a console people cared about. Xbox Live proved online gaming could actually work on consoles, with friends lists, voice chat, paid online multiplayer, a real community. That was the foundation, but Microsoft knew the next generation was the real fight. Sony was hyping the PS3 like it was about to descend from the ceiling, with the choir behind it. It was the next cell processor, the next big living room machine, so Microsoft had a choice. Wait around and let Sony control the conversation again, or launch first, grab momentum, and make the Xbox 360 feel like the future before the PS3 even showed up. So that is exactly what they did. The Xbox 360 launched in North America on November 22nd, 2005. Nearly a full year before the PlayStation 3. That early launch was not just timing, it was strategy. Microsoft was not just launching a console, they were trying to stop Sony from owning the living room again. Now, if you've heard about the Red Ring of Death, it sounds pretty dramatic, because it was. On the original Xbox 360, the power button had a ring around it, split into sections. Normally you wanted green. Green meant everything was fine. Green meant the console was alive. Green meant you were about to lose a Halo match and blamed lag like a responsible adult. But when parts of that ring turned red, the console was throwing in an error. And not every red light pattern meant the same thing. One red light could mean one type of hardware error. 2 red lights could point toward overheating. 4 red lights could mean something like the AV cable was not connected right. But the one everybody feared was the 3 red lights. 3 red lights usually meant general hardware failure, which is corporate speak for something important inside this box just gave up. That's why players called it the Red Ring of Death, because when those lights showed up, your game night was over, your console was done, and now you were staring at a white plastic brick with the glowing red funeral wreath around the power button. 3 red lights did not feel like an error code, it felt like your Xbox had just flatlined in your own living room. For years, people explained the red ring like this: the Xbox 360 overheated, and that is not totally wrong, but is way too simple. The real problem wasn't just that the console got hot once, the problem was what happened over and over again. You turn it on, it heats up, you play for hours, it gets hotter, you turn it off, it cools down. Then you do it again the next day. Heat up, cool down, heat up, cool down. Those constant temperature changes could put stress on the hardware, the board could flex, the chips could shift, the tiny internal connections inside the GPU package could weaken and crack over time. That is what made the red ring so nasty. It was not always one loud failure, it was slow damage building up quietly, until one day your Xbox looked at Halo 3 and said, "Nah, I'm clocking out." And there were other factors too, like tight case designs, cooling limits, manufacturing pressure, and the rush to launch before the PS3 showed up. The red ring was not just one bad part, it was the heat, design pressure, manufacturing issues, and launch pressure. It all stacked inside one very expensive white box. The Xbox 360 did not just get hot, it heated up, cooled down, flexed, and slowly broke its own internal connections. And this is where the story gets uncomfortable, because the red ring did not just appear out of nowhere, like some ghost crawling out of the janitor closet. There were warning signs. Reports later showed serious hardware concerns before and after the launch. Consoles were failing in testing, manufacturing was not exactly screaming everything is fine. At this point, Microsoft had a choice. They can either slow down, risk losing the launch window, and give Sony more breathing room, or push forward, launch first, and deal with the mess later. And so they decided to push forward. Now, Microsoft never released one clean public failure rate number where everyone can point and say, yep, that is exactly disaster percentage. The numbers came out later, were all over the place. Some warranty data showed rates way above normal, some player surveys were even higher, though those were often from people who had already been burned. But the exact percentage matters less than the bigger point. This was not normal. Players were not imagining it, retailers were not imagining it, repair centers were not imagining it, and early on, Microsoft publicly treated the issue like it was smaller than players felt it was. Isolated reports, normal electronics failure rates, nothing to panic about. Meanwhile, people were watching their consoles die in real time, during one of the biggest gaming eras they have ever experienced. That is what made players so angry. The scary part was not just Xbox were failing, it was the warning lights that were blinking before players ever saw the red ring. And if you were like me who lived through this era, you remember the signs. Sometimes the Xbox would freeze first, sometimes the screen would glitch out with weird checkerboard patterns. Sometimes the fan would sound like it was preparing for takeoff, and then one day you hit the power button and there they were, the 3 red lights. Game night is over, campaign is over, Xbox Live party over. Your console had officially rage quit without putting in a 2-week notice. Then came the repair process. Microsoft would send you a plain brown shipping box, and players started calling it the coffin box, because that is exactly what it felt like. You were not mailing in your electronics, you were sending your Xbox off the console hospice. And sometimes you waited weeks to get it back, which was brutal, because this was the Halo 3, Gears of War, Call of Duty, Mass Effect, BioShock era. This was not a great time for your Xbox to suddenly become decorative furniture, and people got desperate. This is how the towel trick became famous. Players would wrap the Xbox 360 in a towel, turn it on, let it overheat, and hope the heat would temporarily make the broken connections behave again, which is insane. That is not a repair, that is not troubleshooting, that is bargaining with a haunted toaster. The towel trick was not a fix, it was gamers wrapping a dying console in fabric and hoping signs took the day over. And for some people, it seemed to work, just long enough to give them false hope. Then the red lights came back, because the real problem was still sitting inside that box, waiting. Eventually, Microsoft could not treat this like a small support issue anymore. Too many consoles were failing, too many players were angry, too many repair boxes were moving around like Xbox had accidentally started a cardboard subscription service. And on July 5th, 2007, Microsoft made the big move. Peter Moore posted an open letter, and that letter changed the entire Red Ring story. Microsoft extended the Xbox 360 warranty to 3 years for general hardware failures shown by 3 flashing red lights. Not just new consoles people already owned. and if you had already paid for one of those repairs, Microsoft said they would reimburse you. They also covered the repair, the shipping, which mattered because before this, a lot of players felt like they were being punished for buying the console early. But this was not just a customer service update, this was Microsoft publicly admitting, okay, this problem is bigger than normal. Microsoft took a charge between about $1.05 and $1.15 billion, commonly remembered as the $1.15 billion Red Ring bill. That is not we had a few bad units. That is not oops somebody forgot to tighten the screw. That is a corporate alarm bell loud enough to make the breakroom microwave unplug itself. This was not a pitch, this was a $1 billion fire extinguisher. And the weirdest part is that $1 billion decision may have saved Xbox. It wasn't until years later Peter Moore talked about what happened behind the scenes. He had walked into Microsoft leadership and explained that fixing this problem was not going to be cheap, not millions, not move some budget around and pretend nobody noticed money. He told Steve Ballmer this was going to cost around $1.15 billion to fix the consoles, protect the brand, protect Microsoft's reputation, and keep Xbox alive as a business. That is definitely a terrifying number. That's the kind of number that makes accountants stare into the distance like they just saw their entire spreadsheet leave its body. But according to Moore, Ballmer did not blink. He basically said, do it. And that mattered because Xbox could not keep dragging its feet. They could have treated every Xbox like a separate little customer service problem. They could have tried to save money in the short term and destroyed trust in the long way, but instead they took the hit, a massive hit, the kind of hit that hurts the quarterly numbers, but maybe saves the entire brand. Because at that point, players did not just need their consoles fixed, they needed to know Microsoft was not going to leave them holding a dead white box and a receipt. Microsoft did not just repair consoles, they paid over $1 billion to repair trust. And that is the strangest part of the whole story. Even after everything, people still came back. Players were furious. Some were on their second Xbox, or third, or fourth. At that point, owning a 360 felt like being in a toxic relationship with a very fun toaster. But the problem was, the Xbox 360 had become part of the people's actual lives. It was not just the games, it was the routine. You logged in after work, you jumped into party chat with the same group of friends every night, you chased achievements together, you built up progress that actually felt meaningful. Your friends list was not just names, it was your crew. So when the Red Ring hit, people were not just mad because the machine broke, they were mad because their doorway into that daily escape and those relationships suddenly slammed shut. That is why so many people boxed up their broken consoles, sent them in, complained the whole time, and then plugged the replacement right back in the second it arrived. The Xbox 360 was so good that people hated the hardware failure, but they still wanted their Xbox back. Microsoft did not fix the Xbox 360 overnight. There was no magical update where somebody clicked download reliability. They had to revise the hardware again and again. The launch model was called Xenon, and that was the one closely tied to the early Red Ring nightmare. Then came Zephyr, which added HDMI and made some internal changes. Then Falcon showed up with a smaller, cooler CPU, which helped reduce heat and power use. Then Jasper improved things even more with a smaller GPU. By that point, the Xbox 360 was becoming less terrifying to own, not perfect, but way better than the early models that sounded like they were refreshing after takeoff. And then 2010, Microsoft released the Xbox 360 S, the Slim, a full redesign, smaller, quieter, cleaner, more reliable, the kind of console that looked like it had finally been to therapy and stopped trying to destroy itself during multiplayer. That was the cleanup arc. It was not instant, not pretty, but real. Microsoft kept changing the hardware, reducing heat, and slowly moving away from the disaster that haunted their early years. Microsoft did not fix the Xbox 360 overnight, they revised it again and again, until the console stopped trying to become a space heater. So the Red Ring of Death was a disaster. No sugarcoating it, Microsoft launched one of the most important consoles ever, while the hardware underneath was quietly fighting for its life. They wanted momentum, they wanted the Xbox 360 in living rooms before the PlayStation 3 could take over the conversation. And it worked. The Xbox 360 became legendary, but the bill came due, and broken consoles, angry players, coffin boxes, and over $1 billion in repairs. And that is the lesson. Rushing hardware can win you the launch window, but it can also light your brand on fire. We still see pieces of that today with Joy-Con drift, controller drift, handheld thermals, early hardware concerns, reliability debates, every new console, every new handheld, every shiny new box under the TV comes with the same question. Did this thing get enough time in the oven, or are we beta testing the hardware with our wallets? But here's where the Red Ring story gets complicated. Microsoft messed up badly, then they eventually owned the mess. They fixed the hardware over time, and somehow the Xbox 360 survived. Not because players forgot, they did not forget. They just loved the console enough to come back. Because the games were there, the friends were there, the lobbies were there, the achievements were there, the whole generation was there. The Red Ring proved that rushing hardware can burn a brand, but owning the mess can save it. So now we're back in the break room. Gary from IT staring at the Xbox 360, the 3 red lights are glowing, the Halo lobby already replaced him, and Todd from HR is there asking if the console needs emotional support leave. I'm like, Todd, it needs a shipping box, and maybe a priest. Well, that's all I got. I gotta bounce before Gary wraps that Xbox in a towel, sets it under the vending machine, and calls it thermal engineering. But before I go, do me a favor. Hit like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want more gaming disasters cleaned up from the break room, and comment down below. Would you forgive a console that failed if the games were good enough? This is Scruffy the Janitor signing off. Peace out.